Oh, I'm not hearing anything. I just pushed play on something. Oh. Let's try that. All right.
Oh, sorry.
Good thing it's in the beginning. All right. Ready?
Hello, listeners out there in podcast land. It's time for another episode of RFA Insider.
That was Amy and I'm Eugene, and today on RFA Insider, we're almost live.
That's right. What you're hearing right now is totally unedited, unabridged, and really us.
So get ready for a really awkward adventure of verbal missteps, feet in our mouths, and probable lapses in on-air chemistry, because RFA Insider will be back right after this. You're listening to the RFA Insider podcast, made by two real-life staffers at Radio Free Asia.
If you'd like to send us feedback, there are many ways you can do this.
You can send us an email at insider@rfa.org.
You can comment on our webpage at rfa.org/English/insider. Just click on the episode you're listening to and write your comment below.
Or you can send us a tweet at RFA Insider or visit us in person.
No, don't visit us in person.
Right, don't visit us in person. But anyway, we really want to hear from you.
So tune in every other Friday and we'll take you behind the scenes.
And tell you what the news really means here at RFA Insider.
All right, so this is our almost live episode of RFA Insider. So what exactly does that mean, Eugene?
Well, up until this episode, RFA Insider has been heavily edited. So for those of you who don't know, our recordings sometimes capture more than an hour of material, and then I spend a few hours deciding what can be cut down to get it down to 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Or what that actually means is somewhere between 40 and 50 minutes.
So what else do you edit?
So yeah, if you've listened to some of the more recent episodes, I've been adding an outtake reel where I put in some of our funnier slip-ups. And well, in this episode, there isn't going to have one because we're actually going to try to go for it all in one go. And additionally, I like to try to edit out long pauses or too many ums and uhs and the word like, because people use the word like too much.
So we can't use the word like as much as we'd like?
Well, you could. It'll just be there for everyone to hear.
Okay, so why are we doing this, Eugene?
Why indeed? Well, it's kind of a practice run because one of these days we want to go actually live with video. So this is kind of like live streaming our podcast. And because we're practicing, I'm totally decked out in all this RFA gear. You can see I have the nice old logo, retro logo of the RFA hat. Got the nice RFA hoodie, my Benar News keychain fob, holder thingy. I don't know what you call it. Lanyard, that's what it's called. But hopefully this will all go well.
Yes, so you heard it here first. RFA Insider will in fact go live in an upcoming episode. We've yet to confirm when exactly, but given the information we have right now, it is a definite possibility. Yeah,
so I guess depending on how it goes today, we'll see.
But what if it doesn't work out and we completely fumble this episode?
Well, in that case, I'm just going to have to edit. And to let our listeners know whether it's edited or not, you'll either hear applause here, which means I didn't touch anything, or I'll stick in the fail trombone to remove the applause to indicate that I did, in fact, edit this episode after the fact. Okay, disclaimer, I actually did edit in the sound effects because the connection wasn't very good. But everything else is actually as we said it. Well, mostly anyway.
Okay, well, I heard applause, so hopefully the listeners did too. But let's get the show on the road and move on to
Podcast Free Asia! All right, so on this edition of Podcast Free Asia, we've got tongue twisters. So Amy, repeat after me. She sells seashells down by the seashore.
She sells seashells.
Okay, I'm just playing. In fact, actually, we spent a lot of time talking about how this episode is, quote-unquote, almost live. So we'll just retroactively say that was Podcast Free Asia for the day, and we will move on.
Okay, sounds good to me. So let's get on to it, starting with the rundown.
The rundown.
All right, so most of the time we use the rundown to kind of go over some of RFA's sillier stories, and I'll take one and Amy will take another, and we'll explain and discuss a bit and have a chuckle along the way. Well, today, because we didn't have an interview segment, we're actually going to do a double dose of rundown where we each take two stories.
Isn't that bad luck if it's 2 plus 2
All right,
as 4.
Right. Number 4 being unlucky. Well, it's funny you say that because actually our first story is kind of 2 stories, which brings our total to 5. So that's not unlucky at all. 5 is pretty good.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to start out with what I call North Korean double feature. So there's 2 North Korean stories that I'm jamming into one. And originally, before even thinking about the luck side of things, I just wanted to combine them because it wouldn't be right to give North Korea half of everything we're covering today. So both of these stories have to do with propaganda. But before we get into it, I wanted to prime everything we're talking about today. I wanted to ask Amy, have you ever been in a situation where you had to attend a mandatory class and none of the information in the class was particularly useful, perhaps in college or maybe in a workplace?
I can do you one better because my first job out of college was as an e-learning designer. So I was the one making all those modules that you have to do when you like onboard onto jobs or like school or class.
So when you say making the modules, did you have like actual actors acting your scenarios out or anything like that?
No, it was
Okay.
more like graphic design, but like you had like a list of like what you had to hit
Oh, okay.
and like you had to
Just
like
graphic
create
design.
a scenario.
I see. I was just, wondering how those actors get those jobs and whether they're happy to get them. It's like, yes, I'm playing the harasser in this next video, which, that's not, I don't know. Maybe they aspire to do something more grandiose than that, but you got to take what you can get when you're in that field, I suppose. All right, in my case, I have been in a situation where I was in a lecture that I didn't particularly enjoy. It was let's just say I was implicated in being in a party. This was when I was in college. So I was present at a party where alcohol consumption was happening, and I was younger than 21. So, as punishment, I had to go to a mandatory alcoholism class.
Alcoholism.
Yes. And it was clear that the instructor and all the attendees, who were all other college kids who, like me, had either been caught drinking or suspected of such, I think it was clear we were all going through the motions. So
That makes sense.
this is before the PowerPoint era. So the instructor pulled out his overhead projector slides that he probably wrote sometime in the late 1980s and went through reading them one by one and explaining all about alcoholism and the dangers of alcoholism. And then we had a multiple choice quiz about the dangers of alcoholism. The quiz had very obvious answers. So, for example, true or false, alcohol can be addictive. Obviously it's true. And all of the questions were of that nature. And then we were told to trade the paper with the person next to us. And we all graded the tests, and that was that. And we all went our separate ways. And all things considered, that's better than getting kicked out of school, but it was kind of a waste of an hour. So I think it was just kind of a slap on the wrist, like, hey, you're a college kid. You shouldn't be drinking, but we know you're going to anyway. But anyway, do this thing so we can just cover ourselves, right? But the reason I bring this up is because every week in North Korea, people have to go to meetings of their neighborhood watch unit. And this is on top of similar meetings they have at their workplace.
Okay.
Or at school. Yeah.
So what goes on at a meeting of the neighborhood watch unit?
That's a very good question. Well, the neighborhood watch unit has been described as the lowest level of administrative organization in the government strategy of social control that serves to enforce the complete loyalty of every North Korean citizen to the supreme leader and to the party. And that's quite a mouthful, but basically it's a meeting where in your neighborhood with your neighbors, you go to the neighborhood leader's house, and then basically you're supposed to snitch on each other, and talk about each other and all the things that you did that were, against the law or against what would be considered ethically loyal or whatever.
I see.
So over the past week, they have to criticize themselves and say, oh, well, I didn't collect as much barley at the field as I could have, or something like that. And then also you have to criticize other people in the neighborhood and say, well, he didn't do this. I saw him slacking off or whatever. But really what happens is that the people, they agree what they're going to criticize each other beforehand. And so they go hand in hand together and they'll say stuff like, all right, well, you tell them that I didn't collect enough barley. And I'll say that like when you were sweeping the monuments, you missed a spot or something. And then, everybody goes through the motions and they all go home. And it's just an annoying thing that they all have to do. Another thing that happens at these meetings is they'll have lectures. These are usually coming from the local party office, but often they come at the order of the central government, which even provides lecture materials.
Okay.
And earlier this month, the lecture was all about Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, and how he admires North Korean leader Kim Jong Un and respects him deeply, even more so than other world leaders.
All right.
So what do you think the reason would be that he would be so respectful of Kim Jong Un?
I mean, I guess they have similar reputations.
Okay, well, that's a good guess. So according to a resident of the northeastern province of North Hamgyong, which is in the northeast of the country, the evidence that they gave for Putin's admiration and profound respect was that he arrived to a summit meeting in 2019 30 minutes early. And Putin, of course, is known to disrespect other world leaders by being late, often by several hours, according to this lecture. And the lecturer said it's a sign that he looks down on everybody else. But because he's so smitten with Kim Jong Un, he arrived to this meeting early in 2019 by 30 minutes. And it's solid proof that he looks up to him, except this basically falls flat when you consider that during the most recent visit, which was in June, Putin was late by a total of 8 hours. So, I got to say, if Putin's punctuality is the barometer for gauging his level of respect for someone, then no, he doesn't have the deepest respect for Kim Jong Un, because that trip was supposed to be 2 days, but they ended up cramming it all into 1 day. And then he was gone as soon as he arrived. He was off to his next summit in Vietnam right after that. And you'll recall from our previous episode discussing that visit that Putin looked like he was either feeling very emotional from seeing North Koreans sing the national anthem of Russia, or he was going to pass out because of lack of sleep. So let's play that clip right now. I've never heard it sung this way. Like, even when Russians sing their anthem, it's not this amazing and moving. Like this was really like high production value, and there's parts where even like they turn to Kim Jong Un and Putin looks like he's about to cry. Even it's like he's moved by it too. Either that or he's about to pass out because the night before he was actually traveling to North Korea and he was supposed to be there for 2 days, but he actually was like 8 hours late because he was doing something in like a different part of Russia first.
Okay.
And so they had to jam all these like activities into 1 day, and he probably didn't get enough sleep. So he's either
like sleep deprivation heightens your emotional.
He's either extremely moved or he's about to pass out. Okay, so here we're going to segue into the second part of our double feature.
I was going to say, Eugene, you're gushing a little bit in the first half.
Okay. Well, once again, the 5 North Korean women who were singing the anthem in front of Putin, they were led by my personal favorite North Korean pop star, Kim Jong Un, whose name I have become accustomed to saying now, actually. And it's come to the point that, I don't think it would really be a complete episode of RFA Insider unless we reference this woman. So you'll recall once again from that previous episode that we talked about the song that put her on our radar, which is called Friendly Father. And if you recall, we talked about that song in depth and how every single person in North Korea was singing the praises of Kim Jong Un in a music video that might have revealed sanctions violations. Yeah, so it turns out in that song anyway, people in North Korea are getting really sick of it. Because a resident in the northern province of Yangon he requested anonymity for safety reasons. He told RFA that they're really pushing this song on everyone, making them sing it at every opportunity, and even at before these mandatory meetings, and including those of the neighborhood watch unit. So this resident said he's heard it every day since its release, except for a 3-day period in May, which people were made to mourn the death of a high-ranking official. And I guess that's such an upbeat song that, it probably doesn't match that well with when you're supposed to be mourning, right?
Yeah, it is a very cheery song.
Right. And the resident also talked about how people are avoiding public parks because of this song. There's a public park where old people gather in his city, and these are people that are basically retired and like to do things like play games, exercise, sing songs, and dance and entertain themselves. But the park manager came along and turned off their music, kind of like those old 80s rap movies where you have the nerdy teacher pulling the plug out of the wall for the boombox and shaking his fingers at the no-good rotten kids who were disturbing public order with their incessant freestyling or breakdancing. And I'm probably dating myself again, but basically he turned off their music and he played this song, Friendly Father, on repeat. And so the old people just went home, and it was a beautiful day, and yet the park, which is usually full, was deserted. And this song is playing in there on repeat. So finally, a lot of old people said they hate this song because they're a good 30 or 40 years older than Kim Jong Un, but they're supposed to call him their father. And, Korea is a very strictly Confucian society, and respect for elders is extremely important in Korean culture. And even if in some cases it's undeserved. So the idea that when a young person reaches old age themselves, the younger people will eventually, they will automatically grant them respect in the same way. But here they are after having survived to old age in one of the world's most difficult places to live, and they have to call this young whippersnapper kid their friendly father, and it just kind of rubs them the wrong way.
Yeah, again and again, it sounds like.
Yes, yeah, again and again and again. All right.
So I'm pulling my first story from Asia Fact Check Lab.
Oh, cool.
Which reviewed a claim that 10% of Taiwan's population is actually ethnically Japanese.
Really?
Yes.
So is that true? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, we're about to find out.
Yes, we're going to find out.
So Victor Gao is the vice president of this Beijing-based think tank, the Center for China and Globalization. And he's previously worked for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but he's best known for being former Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping's English interpreter.
Ah, okay.
So this was like in the 80s.
Right.
So this August, Gao appeared on Al Jazeera, and he made the claim that 10% of the Taiwanese population is descended from Japanese settlers. So as context, Taiwan was a Japanese colony for 50 years until 1945. And that's when Japan surrendered in World War II and gave up ownership of the island.
Right. In the San Francisco Treaty, which ended the war, Taiwan was supposed to revert to quote unquote China, which at the time was, I guess, still undetermined as to which country that was.
Yeah, that's the crux of it.
Okay, so that treaty was signed in 1952, and actually China was not mentioned in regards to quote-unquote Formosa, which is what Taiwan was called, only saying that Japan renounces its claim to Formosa.
So in the interview, Gao said, and I quote, "Now, if you really do your homework, you will realize that those diehard Taiwanese separatists include many of these Japanese Taiwanese." So our fact check lab followed up with Gao, and he explained that his claims were based on 3 visits he took to Taiwan. And he said he talked to lots of people in politics and business.
Okay, and so he came with the 10% figure from
talking to people
talking
in Taiwan.
to people, and they're like, yeah, it's 10%, totally. And he's like,
So he said,
that sounds plausible.
Bro, just trust me.
Just trust me. Okay, well, I mean, that doesn't quite work. I guess they could do a 23andMe on everybody there, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows what that would reveal.
According to Taiwanese government reports, after Japan lost Taiwan, roughly 300,000 Japanese settlers were repatriated back to Japan.
Okay.
And there were some exceptions made, but it wasn't that many. So at the end of it all, only 755 Japanese individuals. So that's Japanese nationals and Okinawans.
Okay, and that's 755 people that remained on Taiwan.
Yes.
So from that, what's the current population of Taiwan? Do we know?
Oh, that's a very good question. But
Okay.
10%, I believe, was, fact check me on this, 2 billion?
Okay, well, I can't edit and fact
2
check.
million?
Okay, well, then I guess, 10%, if it's 2 million, would be 200,000.
It
right?
was a significant chunk.
Right, and so we're saying that from these 755 people, that somehow 200,000 people are supposed to be existing today. So they're very prolific.
Yes, clearly.
Let's just say that. Okay.
So,
all right, the present-day population of Taiwan is 23.42 million. We got a little confused with numbers there. So 10% of that would be 2.34 million people. So from those remaining Japanese, they begat 2 million people in order to get to 10%.
Asia Fact Check Lab did the math for us, thank God, and found that the current estimate of ethnic Japanese people in Taiwan falls significantly short of
I should hope so.
the 10%.
Okay.
But I think more interesting in this story is the complexity of, what is Taiwanese. So for starters, do you know which countries have colonized Taiwan?
Oh, gee, we did talk about this in an earlier episode when we were responding to some listener feedback. So I'm going to say Portugal. Is that one of them?
You are close geographically.
Okay, the Netherlands.
Yes.
Okay, that's one. Spain?
Yes.
Okay. Can't think there's got to be some more. Well, Japan.
Yes.
Which you said.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yeah. So the Spanish, the Dutch, the Chinese,
Okay.
and Japanese. So
wait. So the Japanese are considered to have colonized it then? I mean, the Chinese, because you said, yeah.
Well, I guess following the Spanish and the Dutch, various Chinese kingdoms. And then, of course, the ROC when they fled from mainland China.
But would you consider the ROCs a colonizer?
Well, before all of these colonizers, there was Taiwanese Aboriginal people living.
Yes.
So then from that...
So in that case, yes.
Yes.
Okay. But that isn't to say that, going back to that listener's previous point, that it's not that the ROC is a colonizer and the PRC would not be.
No.
Yeah,
so
okay.
there were Chinese still there before
Okay.
the ROC came.
All right.
But on the opposite side of Victor Gao are people who say, lots of Taiwanese people have some level of Aboriginal blood in them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're making the case for a distinction between Taiwanese and mainland Chinese, Han identity.
Uh-huh.
Like we are not one and the same. So, and even after that, there's the question that Gao's interview raises, which is a shared origin or ethnicity enough?
Right.
So the Pew Research Center did a survey in 2023, and they found that only 3% of people in Taiwan consider themselves primarily Chinese. So
3%.
yes. In comparison, 28% think of themselves as both Taiwanese and Chinese, but the majority, which is 67%, consider themselves primarily Taiwanese.
I see.
So, and this is especially true among young Taiwanese under 35.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's uniquely hard to pin down, what makes a Taiwanese identity given the island's history, as well as when that identity ties so closely into politics.
Okay, so this is very interesting to me. As a Taiwanese American, I wonder what your thoughts on the subject might be.
But that's even more complicated because I'm
Yeah.
Taiwanese American.
Right.
So I've always just thought to tell people, oh, I'm Taiwanese, because I assume from there they'll naturally assume I'm ethnically Chinese.
Right.
Rather than saying, oh, I'm Chinese, and then they'll miss the Taiwanese.
Okay. But people don't be like, oh, so when you say you're Taiwanese, does that mean you're like Aboriginal also in there? I mean, they
No.
don't really do that because I guess a lot of people don't really know that much about it. All right, well, let's move along to the next story. For this one, I'd like to ask you if you've ever played any racing car video games, and which was your first?
It's a bold assumption that there's more than one.
Okay.
I had a Game Boy Color at one point.
Nice.
And then I had one of those racing games with like the chunky cartridge where like if you hit a wall while you were racing, it would like rumble.
Oh,
the console.
yeah, that's cool. Do you know what it was called?
No, I have
Oh,
no
you don't know
idea.
what it's called. Okay. Well, for me, there's another example that reveals my age. My first racing game was Pole Position on the Atari 2600.
The Atari 2600.
Yeah, and well, it was pretty cool, but I guess it kind of felt a little detached from reality because, you have at least the rumble thing to like kind of simulate that you're actually in the car. This one, it was just like a track that's in front of you, and maybe there's some other cars on the track, but other than that, there's nothing else in the world other than you and the track. And I don't know, it just kind of felt like detached from reality. And later games like Rad Racer on the Nintendo Entertainment System, they added things like signs and trees to make it feel realistic, but it still kind of felt like you were not in a real world. That game, though, it did have like a kind of 3D effect.
Rad Racer.
Yes, where you put on the green and blue glasses, and then the screen would turn double, except for it never worked. So it looked like you were just driving two cars, And then it never really looked like 3D. It might have made it look like you're looking into the TV, but nothing was ever coming out of it, I guess. So maybe I was wearing them backwards or something. But later on, there were games that tried to incorporate the scenery into the race. So shout out to games like Crazy Taxi, Ridge Racer, and Mario Kart 64 that made you feel like you're in an actual world rather than running along a track, even if you're still running around the track. And they would put you in situations like riding through a castle or through the streets of a beachside town or trying to hustle through San Francisco while picking up people in your taxi and dropping them off as soon as possible. This is in the PlayStation era. I don't know if you remember that.
I have heard of the PlayStation.
Okay. All right. Well, they're on PlayStation 5 right now, so not that I'm that much of a gamer anymore. But just this past week, the reason I'm talking about this, Southeast Asia played host to the Gumball 3000. Now, do you know what the Gumball 3000 is?
No, but it sounds cute.
Sounds cute. Okay, well, I don't blame you because I didn't know either, but the Gumball 3000 is a supercar rally, which is a 3,000 kilometer course, and it's not a race, so it's a rally. It means that it's not really competitive, but it's a fun way for car enthusiasts or enthusiasts of quote-unquote supercars to show off the cars in exotic locations.
Okay, so a supercar rally. Can you define a supercar for
That's
us?
a good question because, to tell you the truth, I'm not much of a car person myself, and I could care less about fancy sports cars. But when I see them on the road, I'll usually say, hey, look at that, and not really give second thought to it. So they're nice to look at, but I don't really care. But from the coverage, these supercars included Bugattis, Lamborghinis, Rolls Royces, and cars from other makers. And other coverage I watched showed off cars made by Porsche and Ferrari, so just basically expensive cars. And one of the commentators said that sometimes people enter the rally with a stock car, which means it doesn't have any modifications. But the cars that he liked the best included some that were kind of tricked out with cameras that retract under the car maker's logo. And there was one guy who drove an 80s era 911. Do you know what an 80s era 911 would be?
No, I haven't the faintest idea.
Okay. Well, the only reason I know what that is because I used to watch the Transformers cartoon when I was a kid. And there was one Transformer, his name was Jazz, and he was the cool guy, always listening to the hip music and having the cool voice where he called, yeah, daddy-o, that's it, And among the Autobots, which are the good guys, the good guy faction, he was a Porsche 911. So the rally started in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, which they called Saigon in the official literature, but we have to call it Ho Chi Minh City. Then it crossed into Cambodia and went through Phnom Penh and then made a stop at Angkor Wat. And then it crossed into Thailand to go through Bangkok and turned south to go through the resort town called Krabi, crossing into Malaysia, hitting Kuala Lumpur and ending in Singapore. So basically it's kind of not a race, but an auto rally that goes right around the Gulf of Thailand.
I have only very boring questions to ask, such as did they not have to pass through like a visa, like a passport kind of entry to cross into each country? I
think that's something you take care of beforehand, and then just if you're following the course of the race, they don't stop you for that because you've already cleared it with everybody that you're participating,
Okay.
So RFA's Khmer service reported on the Gumball 3000 for the part that went through Angkor Wat, and if you don't know what Angkor Wat is, it's a 12th century temple that is shown on Cambodia's flag. And it's called one of the seven wonders of the world, or the modern seven wonders of the world. So it's a very, very old temple from the 12th century. And so although this is not a race, just the images of the cars riding through Angkor Wat was just really cool. And it took me back to the time that racing games just started getting realistic that I was talking about. And it made me imagine what an Angkor Wat race course might look like. And you can imagine drifting around tight corners in the temple grounds or driving through the main gate and things like that.
Yeah, like that image of like the statue head, like all covered in like, the trees and stuff.
That would be cool. And like you're doing a drift around it or something.
All right. So what was the purpose of the rally? Okay.
So the organizers of the rally say it's for charity, and every person who enters has to actually pay in order to enter.
Like a spectator?
Yeah. Well, no. Like if you enter as a competitor, you have to pay a fee to enter. And so they say it's like a quick boost to the local economy and tourism because along the way, they also end up spending money on things like food and gas and lodging and, maybe necessary repairs and things like that. And it's not just that these super rich people are showing off because there's also a lot of enthusiasts who will follow the rally in their own cars, and they're staying in hotels and eating at restaurants too. So while it did provide a short-term boost to the local economy, some human rights activists said it could be seen as insensitive. And can you guess why?
Could it be possibly the wealth disparity of having a rally of luxury supercars drive through a country where most people earn around $200 a month?
Well, that's a very specific guess. That's very good. Yes, that's exactly right. Sung Sen Karuna, who's the leader of the Cambodian Human Rights and Development Association, also known by the French acronym ADHOC, told RFA that he thought it's not a good look for Cambodia given its rampant inequality. So he said, Cambodia is in a miserable situation. People are migrating to work overseas, but they have debt-trapped loans and they're now showing off supercars. This is not good. And, I get that. To some, the optics might not seem right. But like we said, in the short term, it did boost tourism along the route. And charity-wise, they did raise $200,000 for the Angkor Hospital for Children, and it built a floating soccer field in the village of Kampong Keng, which is a large floating village. So
the proceeds did.
yes.
Whoa, pretty cool.
So I can see both sides here, but on the one hand, this is kind of like worshiping wealth in a country where wealth inequality is so pronounced. But on the other hand, it's not like the hospital can't use an extra 200K, and it's not like the businesses along the route didn't appreciate the increased customer traffic, even if it was just temporary.
Yeah, I gotta agree. And Angkor Wat is, like one of the biggest sources of tourism. Anyway,
Yes.
So
it's another way to boost Angkor Wat as well.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. So Eugene,
Yes.
what was the last concert that you went to?
Well, what do you mean when you say concert? Because do orchestral performances count, or elementary school class singing songs for their parents? Does that count?
I guess what you would count as a concert.
Okay, well, then I guess I'm going to assume that you're talking about pop music concerts. And unfortunately, the answer to that is supremely nerdy. It was a Weird Al Yankovic concert at Wolf Trap on stage with the National Symphony Orchestra. But I have not been to concerts in quite a while because having a kid will do that to you. So.
I noticed when you asked if school concerts counted.
Yes. So prior to my son's birth, the last concert I went to see was Snoop Dogg in Seoul at the Velodrome, which was this is where they race bikes in the 1988 Olympics. So that's what it was built for. And he had a concert there along with this Korean hip-hop girl group called 2NE1. Which they got big kind of, I guess, 15 years ago, maybe, or 10 or 15 years ago.
Snoop Dogg had a concert with 21?
Well, they opened for him, and then he
Oh.
played all of his stuff, starting from the beginning up until, like, well, not everything, but just he went through all of his eras, including his Snoop Lion era, or Snoop Lion, I should say, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah, I also have not been to concerts in a while, but the last concert I went to was BAP, which was a K-pop group, also in Seoul while I was studying abroad.
Oh, cool. Oh, I wonder, what was your first concert?
Another K-pop group, slightly more famous. It was BTS.
Ooh.
Way back when they did not sell out their concerts yet. So it was the Olympic handball stadium in Seoul.
Okay.
And I was in the pit, and there were maybe 30 of us, and just
30 people?
on that side of the pit.
Oh, okay.
But
that's a really small concert then.
Yeah, never again. But
So I have to ask you, did you see it in motion in 3D?
what?
Did you see it in motion in 3D?
What is that?
Okay, never mind. No, one of the BTS members made a single called I Want to See It in Motion in 3D.
I wanna see it in motion in 3D.
Okay.
Sorry, I've fallen off a bit since then.
Oh, okay,
But-
okay, that's fine. Well, I'm going to tell you about my first concert. It was Paul McCartney in my freshman year of high school at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta.
Paul McCartney.
Yes. And it's a very long story. He was old by that point. It's not like he was in the Beatles or anything. But long story short, let's just say the person that I went with, we were the only people our age, and everyone else was our parents' age complaining about the music being too loud.
Okay, that checks out.
Okay. But yes, why are we talking about concerts today?
Yes, I asked because we're closing out today's rundown with what of the publication Jing Daily described as Yeconomics.
Yeconomics.
Yes.
Okay, because he's Kanye West.
Yes. Ye,
Okay.
the artist formerly known as Kanye West,
Okay.
recently held a concert in China for the first time since 2008.
Okay.
So if it's okay, I'll refer to him as Kanye West just because that's still how he's known popularly.
Is he also known as Ye? And is there
Yes.
anything else that he's known as?
I think he changed his name. So he's professionally known as Ye, but
Okay.
as a media personality. he's
I am
Kanye.
so out of the loop with American music that when you say Kanye West, the only thing I know is that he ain't, he ain't saying she's a gold digger.
I'm so tickled that we're having this discussion as a work thing.
Yeah, okay.
So
Me too.
the concert took place in Hainan and unsurprisingly sold out. So Kanye West is very popular in China as he is everywhere else in the world. And all his movements and his team's movements while he was in Hainan, just ordering McDonald's or getting groceries, went viral on Chinese social media sites.
So wait, he went to McDonald's and people were recording him
People
there?
took a photo of his bodyguard picking up his McDonald's order, and that photo went viral.
Oh, what did he order? Did he get the number 6? I got to get the number 6.
Yeah.
No, okay. Have you ever actually met celebrities before?
I met BAP when I went to their concert.
Okay. But you aren't oh my God, it's BAP. You're just oh, hey. right?
No, I tried to play it cool, but inside I was like that.
Okay. Well, the few celebrities that I've met, I've done the same thing. It's like, oh, I want to say something, but I'll just kind of like play it off like I see celebrities all the time, and
Yeah. Be cool.
they won't notice me. So,
Although, to be fair, they weren't interacting with him. They just took a faraway photo that went viral.
okay.
And so the concert itself was very strategically timed for the start of one of China's biggest holidays, the Mid-Autumn Festival.
Ah, yes.
In the hopes that concertgoers would kind of stay and spend money in Hainan for a few days after the concert.
Cool. So instead of going to visit their families, they're coming to Hainan for the concert. So the Mid-Autumn Festival, now that's like the festival that is the 15th day of the 8th month of the lunar calendar in East Asia, and it's celebrated in, I guess, the Sinosphere is what we would call it. So Korea, China, I guess Vietnam celebrates it too.
Yes.
And Japan used to, but then they switched to the Western calendar, and so the August 15th is now called Obon, which has nothing to do with the autumn because that's the middle of summer.
Yes.
But anyway.
But Japanese McDonald's does celebrate by releasing the tsukimi burger with an egg.
Tsukimi, of course, meaning viewing the moon.
Yes. Okay, so why are we talking about this? First off...
Why are we talking about McDonald's?
No, why are we talking about Kanye West?
Yes, why are we, indeed?
So first off, and most irrelevantly, did you know Kanye West lived in China when he was 10?
Well, that's actually kind of relevant, isn't it? And yes, I actually did know that because...
I had no idea.
You had no idea. Okay, well, actually, he did do a concert in Korea recently, and that's been going all over Korean social media, so I've heard through my social media contacts that, oh, Kanye is awesome, and, maybe he's so in touch with Korea because he has experience with Asians in his past, because... And I'm like, okay, I guess, right? But anyway, yeah.
Sure.
Continue.
His mom taught at Nanjing University for a year through the Fulbright program.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So he went to school in Nanjing and apparently picked up on English pretty well while he was there.
You mean he picked up on Chinese?
Yes.
So he speaks fluent Chinese?
No, I think he forgot it all. But,
okay. But a year is not really that long. I don't know how much you can pick up in a year. Especially, was he going to Chinese school, or was he
I'm not sure. I think he said he was the only foreigner in his class. So
I guess he did go to Chinese school. That's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, the real point is that his concert was significant and successful enough that China analysts are kind of paying attention to what this might mean for China's economy and for Hainan province.
Okay. So one concert could boost the economy then?
Yeah. Okay. So prior to his concert, Western acts have gotten into the habit of kind of skipping China on their Asia tours. And this is because it's been harder and harder for promoters to secure permits from China's Ministry of Culture and the Ministry of Public Security.
Do you know why that is? Like, why would it be hard to... I would think that they would want, money. So why would...
I'm not sure, actually.
Maybe are they concerned with the viewpoints of the people singing or with the content of the songs? That maybe it might go against what the Chinese Communist Party wants people to listen to or consume?
Yeah, maybe like a little protection against foreign influence a bit.
Yeah.
But one analyst that RFA interviewed said that the decision to okay the Kanye concert was a political one. So he suggested that maybe Beijing had seen how much Taylor Swift's concerts had boosted the economy in Singapore and wanted that same boost for China. So Taylor Swift, by the way, is another act who skipped China on her Eras tour.
And it's very interesting that you mentioned Kanye and Taylor Swift because you remember Kanye famously interrupted an MTV Music Award where I think Taylor Swift was trying to... Well, she was going to get the award for Best Video, and she was in the middle of her speech, and Kanye says, I'm going to let you finish, but Beyonce's video was much better than yours, or something like that. And that's how the two became linked. And here we are talking about them both today. Yes.
Even on Radio Free Asia.
Yes, indeed.
So ultimately, the Kanye concert worked very well. 40,000 concertgoers came to Hainan, the majority of which were young people from major Chinese cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou. And then hotel occupancy and visits to tourist attractions in Hainan both surged. So much so that the local government announced a second Kanye concert in Hainan on September 28th. And that's right before another national holiday week.
That's this Saturday.
Yeah.
Oh, we got to book our tickets.
Yeah.
Because we love Kanye so much.
Let's go.
Hainan is like that's an island off.
Yes.
Kind of like Hong Kong, but not a colony?
It's very close to Hong Kong, actually.
Okay.
But it's like the southernmost point of China, and it is an island as well.
Okay.
So it kind of has like a bit of a distinct identity from the rest of China being like an island.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
So yeah, moving into that, there's also this idea that Kanye's concert shows that Hainan might be hoping to take over Hong Kong's spot as like the hub for international entertainment.
Oh, wow. That would be huge.
So
And not good for Hong Kong.
yeah. Well, since the passing of the national security laws
Yeah.
in Hong Kong, there's been way more censorship of artists, like the corresponding bad press, and then thus like a chilling effect when it comes to Hong Kong's arts and entertainment scene.
I see.
Thus, enter Hainan.
Yes.
So, as we discussed, it's also an island at the southernmost point of China, which
Okay.
means it's kind of far enough from like the major Chinese cities to be like a bit isolated, maybe to minimize any potential like political fallout.
I see. So it's so far away from everything that no matter what people say, if something bad happens, they can easily cover it up or just say, it was these people, these islanders.
Yeah, it's less of like a kerfuffle if it's like so-and-so did something in Beijing versus
right.
like in Hainan.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's also uniquely visa-free for 59 countries.
Just Hainan is,
Yes.
not the rest of China.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Wonder why they did that.
Yeah, I think it's part of the push to kind of promote Hainan. I'm not sure
Okay.
when it was installed, but it just makes it much more convenient for artists and attendees to come.
Yeah, well, I imagine if it's down there, it must be surrounded by tropical waters and be a pretty beautiful place to visit. So
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And recently, like really big Mando pop stars. I don't know if you know Jay Cho.
I do not.
is very large.
The only Mando pop I know is Coco Lee, and we're talking about the early 1990s here. So let's move past that subject. But yes,
Yeah.
Jay Cho, he's huge, and he performed in Hainan, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
along with like other really big Mando pop stars recently. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, I could expect to see big, maybe more international names come hold concerts in China
Mm-hmm.
in the near future.
And maybe that will include Taylor Swift
Yeah,
or Beyonce
yeah.
or all three of them. That would be the most awesome concert ever, right? They could do like what is it, like Hunger Aid or something like that.
Oh, yeah,
Live Aid. Yeah, Live Aid.
in Hainan.
All right. So on that note, I would like to say that brings us to the end of RFA Insider today. For Amy Lee, I'm Eugene Huang, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Like what you heard today? It would really mean a lot to us if you would like, subscribe, or follow this podcast. You can also share it on social media or even text messages. Feeling frisky? Give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or elsewhere. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you here for the next episode of RFA Insider. Sure? Yeah. All right.